Welcome to episode 5 of our Women Who Make It Happen series. So Jess, thank you for joining me. Nice to see you.
Lovely to be here.
Good. Would you mind giving a little introduction as to who you are, what you do?
Absolutely. So I'm Jess. Just Jess is fine. My surname is a first name and it gets very complicated. So just Jess, Jessica Cath from Thistle Initiatives. I'm our head of financial crime. So I head up all of the fun bits, all of the financial crimey elements. Thistle itself is a regulatory compliance consultancy, but I really focus on that financial crime element.
Well, this is all about you today. So it would be great to understand a little bit more about how you've got to where you are today. Maybe key success factors that have enabled you to get to head of financial crime.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to start to share some of my journey. I think throughout the course of my career, it's been a really interesting one, and perhaps a little bit different to some others. I've had quite a lot of success very quickly. I've moved around and been able to sort of strategically navigate my way through quite a successful career to get to me where I am today. So I began with a master's in intelligence and international security, which was super fun and really interesting. And then I went straight into Kroll, which is a corporate investigations firm with more complex advisory pieces, a lot of writing, a lot of examining things. And then I went to a much larger consultancy practice called Capco, which is more traditional consulting. There I did a lot of hardcore project management, large transformation, but always focusing on this financial crime element. And then moved across to Fintrail, which is a bit more of a boutique consultancy, focusing again specifically on financial crime. And there I head up all of their project delivery. So as part of that, I managed all of the team. I built up a lot of their internal processes, as well as all of the large scale delivery. So I did a lot of the project management, a lot of the client relationship management, and really sharpening up my skill sets through there. And then, of course, Thistle came along and they wanted someone to grab this practice, grow this practice, and I now head up their financial crime division. So throughout the course of my journey, I've worked across 3 different consultancy practices, always on the dark side, the consulting side, and really just honed my skills throughout that journey.
Very interesting. How did you find that transition from Capco, which was a much larger, coming into Thistle, and Fintrail, which was more boutique?
Yes, so Capco is very different. It was definitely your more traditional consulting, very male dominated, very strict hierarchies, and it was difficult to navigate some of the cultural challenges.
I was going to ask.
Yes, in that firm. But I was lucky in a sense that I got some really exciting projects where I had full flexibility to manage and deal with clients directly, which you don't often get in large consultancies. So usually in large consultancies, it's just the partner that manages that relationship, and you don't get that exposure at all until later on, perhaps when eventually you might reach that partner stage. But I was very much thrown on site. I was out in Luxembourg with only one other person for 6 months, and that was a fascinating project. I then moved on to another client project where I was out on site by myself, managing a full end-to-end 1.5 year transformation across first and second line, their 3 lines of defense model I had to sort of design and implement, a lot of technical changes. And there I was really sort of reporting into the CEO of the client. So I had a lot of exposure, but I also pushed for that exposure quite hard. So Capco wanted to put somebody else on site to come in and do that with me, but the client was very explicit that Jess is doing an exceptional job and we want Jess to do it. So I had the full backing of the client and was able to do that. But to do that, I had to demonstrate exceptional high quality outputs, very strong leadership skills, strong project management skills, and also was able to grow the project and bring people on the site with me, but they came in under me instead of anyone else joining. So I had a lot of opportunity there, which you don't tend to get with some larger consulting firms, but I also had some really great managers that understood that I needed that space. If they were going to micromanage me, it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
But I had a very open communication channel with my managers, and as long as I could demonstrate the success factors very clearly, they were happy to let me run.
Very interesting. What would you say have been the key successes to your career, having progressed so quickly? So if you could pinpoint it, what would you say it's down to?
So I have always been conscious about demonstrating value very quickly. So I know that often as a woman, you need to demonstrate 120%, unfortunately. And I always had to make sure that whatever I was tasked with, I would deliver that and more. So there's a lot of energy, a lot of time into what I was doing, but the outputs would always have to be sharp. But also I have over time built up quite a nuanced and positive but successful way of dealing with people as well. So when I started my career, I was focusing on being successful in the actual deliverables I was delivering, but I quite rapidly realized that that's only going to get you so far. What I actually had to do was work on my management skills, my people skills, my empathy, all of that kind of thing. I then had to work on. And I actually sought a number of mentors to help me through that. Okay. But as soon as I could map my quality outputs with the nuanced delivery and the ability to engage with different stakeholders, I was really then, kicking on it and was able to progress really quite quickly.
Yeah. Very good. What in terms of your leadership style, what would you say that's like now then?
It's certainly developed a lot. And like I said, I have sought some mentors for that. So again, when I was focused on delivering the quality outputs, I often neglected the softer parts of leadership. So, like I said, the empathy. I was always a good listener, but perhaps I didn't quite realize that people weren't necessarily moving as fast as I was, or had a different way of approaching something. And I would not recognize that I'd have to adjust how I was leading and bringing people along the journey with me. So my leadership style is now much softer, although it's very clear and direct and the expectations are clear, but I am absolutely committed to working with people that also want to succeed. And I will help to mold what they want out of their careers as well. And we just work together. So my leadership is really just bringing people along the journey with me. And it works for both of us. If I can demonstrate that my team is excellent, which they are, and they can demonstrate to me the quality outputs, we're on a win-win situation here.
Their success is a direct correlation
Absolutely,
to yours.
Absolutely. And there's nothing more that I enjoy is somebody coming after my job. So if I hire people into the team, or I can see growth in the team, I immediately pick up on that, give them some more responsibility, help them to shape some new ideas. And there's lots of opportunity. When you're working with me, I will support you to do what you want to do, but I will expect that the outputs are there and you support me as well. So my leadership is softened, but is still very clear.
Yeah, very good. What motivated you then to get into more of that leadership role and taking on the mantle of head of financial crime? It comes with its accountabilities and responsibility. So what was it for you? So I have always been very driven. I think that probably comes from growing up on a farm. You have to just get stuck in and get stuff done. I've got exceptionally busy and driven parents, and they're just always working to do what they can as best they can. And me and my sister are very similar. She, again, is very driven and is very successful in her own industry. And I'm hopefully the same thing in my space as well. So it's definitely more of my background. I will show up every day, be as positive as I can be, and just get stuff done. But I've never been into sport or anything, so I'm never that competitive when it comes to sporting, but I just really love delivering excellent outputs that work. So there are two things that now really bring me to work every day. It's one, high quality outputs and great client feedback, but then two, it's this leadership part. And that was the missing gap I had for a long time, but I
there's so much value I get from supporting someone to develop and grow. And I mean, it really gets me when people don't want to grow, and that perhaps doesn't work, and maybe this isn't the space for them. But I love to work with high performing teams and show up to work and get it done to the best of our ability.
Yeah. Well, your team then can see your story, and that's inspirational for them to achieve what you've achieved. So
I hope so. Yes. Yeah. And there's still a lot to achieve, right? So again, we've got great growth agenda at Thistle. There's a lot to do.
Yeah.
I'm definitely part of that journey, and my team are coming with me.
Yeah. Very good. What first interested you then about getting into consulting and the financial crime world? Mm-hmm. Because that's a particular path, certainly coming off the back of your degree as well. So
yeah, it's pretty different to farming.
I was gonna say.
I know it's very, very different to growing up on a farm and then coming and working in the city every day on financial crime. But I did my bachelor degree in history and politics, so that was really that sort of mindset, that investigator, that thinking, the problem solving all came out of there. And then my master's degree in intelligence and international security was exceptionally interesting. I did 3 parts of that. One was in investigations and intelligence collection, one was in cyber security and cyber warfare, and one was in nuclear weaponry.
Oh, wow.
So I was originally really interested in, and I did my dissertation in the crossover between cyber security and attacking nuclear power plants. So I was always really interested in investigations, warfare, strategy, geopolitics. But once I joined Kroll, I started to realise that pretty much everything comes down to the movement of money and money flows. And at Kroll, I started to do quite a lot of global money laundering investigations, across Eastern Europe, out of Russia. And I also did HSBC monitorship, skilled persons reviews whilst I was at Kroll. And as part of that, I really just started to dive into the murky world of financial crime pretty quickly. So I really, really dived in nice and early. But then when I went to Capco, it was more focused on building the controls to prevent the crime that I had previously been investigating and reviewing. So now we work to both build and assure financial crime frameworks.
Very good. So throughout your career thus far, I appreciate you've progressed very quickly. You've moved institutions. What cultural differences have you encountered, if any?
Yes, it was very key when I moved to Thistle what sort of culture I wanted to create, because I'd seen bad cultures and I'd seen good cultures. I'd sort of seen what had worked, what hadn't. And when I took on the team at Thistle, we certainly had a journey to go on in terms of the culture of my team. And we're now in a really, really good place where the culture really is high performing, energetic. Everyone shows up and wants to do the work. And that's key for me. And then we enjoy it. You enjoy coming to work. We have to work a lot of days of the year, so we better enjoy it and make it happy.
That's really good. And I think it's important that you have those experiences and understand what doesn't work and what does work for you to shape, okay, this is where I want to be, this is what I want for my team moving forward, and this is what I'm going to instill here and now.
100%. And I have taken quite a lot of external mentorship as well on how to build those type of cultures. So one thing I recognized at Fintrail was, I didn't necessarily have any internal mentors that could really start to hone my leadership in terms of team mentoring and that sort of leadership style. So I sought out actually a female mentor through a women's group, the Albright Network. She is an amazing, very senior HR director in a firm in Germany. So completely different industry. And she has been amazing. We sit down probably once every 3 to 6 months. I talk through some of the challenges, even down to how I approach a conversation in a specific way. How could I reframe something? How could I help to shape someone's career path? And all of those are really starting to help me build really, really effective cultures. I mean, there's still bumps in the road, everyone's learning. But for me, you know, we've been talking now for 1.5 years, and I can definitely see how my sort of style and the culture is really growing alongside that.
That's really good. As well as that mentorship then that you took on, and you wanted that for your career and your success. Was there a particular role model that you had growing up that you aspired to, or what influenced you in a positive way?
I think I've had a few. So there hasn't necessarily been one, but there's definitely been a few along the journey. I mean, we've seen some we've seen some terrible ones, but we've also seen a few good ones recently, some female politicians, which have been really inspirational, obviously across New Zealand and Finland. They've been great leaders recently. Another recent one, Anne Boden. I was at a networking dinner the other night, and they said, who would you like to have dinner with if you could? And please, if Anne's listening, I'd love to have dinner with Anne Boden, to sit down, because I think her career has been fascinating, and watching her sort of grow and
she's been very vocal as well about how she's built Starling, and
that's it.
Yeah,
how she's built a firm, and also the challenges she faced.
Yeah,
and a lot of people not thinking that would be successful. But if you're looking at how fast she got to profitability compared to some of the others, you need to stand up and take women seriously.
It's an inspiring story, isn't it?
Very, very inspiring. So those are some. You know, I've always been, obviously with my history and politics background, I always keep in touch with politics. And I've, you know, a couple of really interesting female politicians. Christine Lagarde as well is really interesting as well. Angela Merkel, I think, is brilliant.
Yeah.
So there's lots of female voices out there. We just need a few more. Just bring on a few more.
Yeah. Well, Sophie's obviously the CEO. I did an episode with her a couple of weeks ago, so she's very inspiring, like leading from the front. So
absolutely, and she was actually one of the key reasons I was finally persuaded to take on this role at Thistle. It's the first time I've had a female manager. So always in the past I have had really exceptional managers. They've all been men though, nothing against that, but you can just see, working in this kind of male-dominated consulting industry, all of them have been male managers. And you know, the opportunity to work alongside Sophie, I mean, her career path has also been fast, energetic, and we definitely have the same sort of energy, which is great, and we can bounce off one another. But she's also very supportive in giving me the rein to run with what I want to run with. Yeah. Obviously, she checks and challenges me and says, hang on, Jess, maybe not so soon, don't do that, let's have a think. But it's a really open dialogue, and it's an exciting place to be. To have a female CEO who has the same energy as you, and you just want to come into work and do a good job.
Yeah.
What more can you want?
Yeah, very good. And then you touched a little bit on challenges. So interesting to know, in your career, or maybe certain companies you've worked for, challenges you faced either as a woman, if any, or what you think the industry needs to do to prevent challenges occurring. Yes,
so I've certainly faced challenges, and quite often they have been on the client side. So obviously I'm very vocal, and my managers and my immediate support network within the consulting firms I've worked for have been quite good.
I think you need to be. It's certainly in consulting that you need to have that assertion and be assertive. So
you need to be assertive, but not in an aggressive way. On the client side, I've definitely faced some challenges. I mean, I was on client site at a Swiss private bank in Luxembourg with only one other person from the consulting firm. So you're very exposed. And you know, the culture with some of the male relationship managers is a very different one to what we have, say, in London. And this is a very old school environment, you know, an old Swiss private bank. And I won't go into any details, but there are a number of incidents that were very difficult to handle, and perhaps I should have raised them with the consulting firm that I was working with at the time. But you're just on site, and then you just get through it and you just do your job. I mean, and one that I can share, I had one incident with a male relationship manager who was frustrated because I'm coming in to talk about financial crime and he wanted to just make money. And they often saw that as a cultural challenge.
Yeah.
And especially coming from, I was actually bleach blonde at the time, a blonde woman from the UK. How frustrating that I'm coming in and telling him no. And he actually was slamming his fist on the desk, shaking his fist in my face, and getting really, really aggressive. You just have to keep your cool and say, you need to calm down. I will not speak to you until you are calm. And that's where I really had to learn restraint. Because very quickly that situation can get out of control. It was also in front of the entire office. So
really?
Power play, very visible in front of everyone. I've had another incident where,
oh gosh,
where it's not aggressive, but mansplaining, somebody talking over and over and over, even though they'd asked me into the room for my opinion, but I can't give my opinion unless you let me speak. I very, very quietly just put my hand in his face and said, you need to stop and listen to what I have to say. And he did get the picture very, very quickly. Now, sometimes I don't get it perfectly. I've made many mistakes, but
you learn from them, and that's what helps you grow.
Yeah. It's a shame that women face those sort of things more than men, but I have certainly had to learn to deal with challenging communication styles, aggression, and how to just learn coping mechanisms.
I think in the role you do as well, like within financial crime and compliance and also risk, you are the voice of challenge. You have to be, because there are regulations that you need to adhere to and you need to abide by those. There's no grey area here. So, and being that voice of challenge can sometimes put you in a situation where you are faced unwanted criticism.
Indeed, yes. I mean, it's helpful in a way that the regulator is being a lot more assertive and intrusive. It's perhaps not that useful for business as a whole, and there's a lot wider conversation happening at the moment for that. But for my space in the UK, the FCA is very clear that they are now more assertive and more intrusive, and they will come on site and they will sort these things out. So the message is a little bit easier than it was 7 years ago, for example, where you just had to try and make the message work and get through to people in a different way. And that's where I learned all the nuanced communication styles. But nowadays, the regulator's been hardcore and people come to me. I don't have to go out as much to speak to people. They're very much coming to me saying, please help me.
Yeah.
And I welcome them with open arms and say, absolutely, we will help you.
We ran our last week's industry event on effective relationships with the regulator for this very reason. So like communication and what's expected. So how have you found that with your clients at Thistle? So explaining, okay, we are dealing with financial crime, like there are issues that can arise. This is what you need to do as a preventative method. Like how has that been for you?
So there are 2 points here. I wish more firms came to us nice and early so that we could do prevention. But quite often it's the opposite. So they come to you
remediation.
Either to remediate, or quite a lot of firms at the moment are getting letters and requests from the FCA, very big data requests, and they will come to me with 1 day before the deadline. Bear in mind the FCA give them 4 or 5 days. It's not a long deadline. And then they say, Jess, please can you help me? I need a customer risk assessment. And I'm there thinking, this is a legal requirement. You needed to have this in place a long time ago. And I wish you'd proactively come to me a long time ago. I mean, to help get that message across nice and early, we are doing a lot more in terms of speaking. So I'm speaking at the Institute of MLROs in a couple of weeks, for example.
Very good, congrats.
So we're talking a lot of at different forums to try and capture the firms nice and early. But we're also still doing a lot of remediation activities where we will, of course, sort things out when they go wrong.
Yeah, very good. I just wanted to circle back to something we briefly touched upon. So you mentioned about some challenges you've overcome in your career. How do you think the industry has adopted more change, kind of the mentality around women in leadership or promoting it as well to enable women to not have those experiences, maybe as was once the case?
I think, so in industry, things have changed a little bit, but there's still a lot that we need to do. So obviously at the moment you have a focus on things like metrics to just get women into leadership roles, which I personally think we need at the moment. So I think you do need to have a certain number of women on your board. I think you do need to have a certain number of women in your management teams, and having that sort of proactive metric is not necessarily a bad thing, but we shouldn't have to have that in place. And just having a few examples of women in leadership roles means that you have a lot more people wanting to aspire to reach those roles. But I personally don't think that we will ever get to a really clear state of equality until we sort out things like maternity and paternity leave, for example. So whilst maternity leave is a little bit more than paternity leave, a lot of firms don't have great maternity leaves. And paternity leave is ridiculously short.
Yeah, it
so you still have examples where men are only taking 2 weeks off, women are expected to take a much longer time off, which immediately puts women on the back foot.
I was 9 months, but I actually extended it for a year.
Exactly, yes. So you had to take that year out, and I'm sure your other half had two weeks or something like that along the lines.
2 weeks.
Yeah, which is nowhere near enough time. For example, in Sweden, where my other half's brother and his wife live, they took pretty much equal amount of time.
Oh, that's
so
good.
they can split it. They get a maternity and paternity where they can split and choose whatever works for them. And there's the expectation that men also take a big chunk of time off with their kids. So it's a completely different narrative. So there's a lot more that we have to do as a society, not just as an industry, to look at how to get better equality and make sure that there is no issue or problem around women doing the things that they physically have to do, or to make sure that we both have access to those things and we don't have to take a big chunk off of time ourselves alone.
It's something we talk about, certainly with the clients we support, the D&I policies and having a representative shortlist, and for the retained searches it's presenting a very equal shortlist. Just curious, how detrimental do you think it might be for women then if they do take that certain period of time out for their own careers? Or have you seen it?
Yes, I certainly think it is detrimental, but it shouldn't be. It should not be. It's helped a little bit with working from home, but then you do see a lot of women trying to do multiple things at once and still having the responsibility of childcare whilst also trying to do their job. So instead of having that flexibility, it ultimately means they're just doing everything at once. And it is a challenge, particularly in consulting, because I mean, for me, I am the primary business development lead. I'm the primary face of our team. I'm the one that's doing a lot of the leading, the driving of all of the pipeline work that we're doing. If I take time out, I mean, I took 3 weeks holiday in September, and you can immediately see the impact of that. So God forbid if I took longer than 3 weeks. But that's part of the work that I'm doing in the team, as part of our growth journey. There's a lot of opportunity to take on some of my responsibilities as we grow and shape the team going forward.
Yeah, that's good. And how diverse is your team? And have you experienced any challenges trying to grow that diversity?
My diversity in my team is great. We actually we only have one man, but that's
some might argue it's the other way.
No. We actually, I've just hired another man, but I purely hire on who's the best person.
Yes,
who is the best person for this job? And I've had lots of different people applying. I've had probably an equal split between men and women. I do a lot of interviewing both. And I'm really just looking for the best people to take on the role. So to try and get around that at the interview stage, I have multiple tasks throughout the interview process, which are based around writing, also presenting and speaking and pitching and answering questions. So I'm looking to test all of the skill sets that we will need for the job that they're applying for. And as part of that, obviously, we're marking them equally across both.
Yeah, very good. I think just maybe a parting question, if this is all right with you. We always ask, what advice would you give to particularly younger female talent coming into, whether it be consulting or payments or financial services generally? What word of advice would you give?
I would say, just go for it. There is a lot of opportunity out there, and just run with it. A lot of people say, go and find a mentor, they will solve all of your issues.
Yeah, I've heard that quite often.
They don't. I mean, in my case, I found a couple of really interesting people that they're either a formal mentor or just people I speak to, and they have been useful, but that's not a silver bullet.
Yeah.
You have to work on developing yourself and growing yourself and driving yourself and showing up and just going for it. I mean, a lot of people also talk about male advocates. Again, not a silver bullet. You can't just rely on a man pulling you into the room. It's hard, but just show up every day, put your best into it, and just go for it.
Very good. Inspiring story, Jess. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you very much.
And good luck with everything moving forward.
Thank you. Cheers.